Level 1. The discovery of fire. Around 1.5 million years ago, in the vast landscapes of East Africa, early humans known as Homo erectus discovered fire. It may have begun with sparks from lightning or friction between stones, but soon humans learned to control the flames. Fire transformed their lives. It provided warmth against freezing nights, protection against predators, and a new way to cook food. Imagine families huddled around the first flickering flames, sharing stories, gestures, and the earliest expressions of social learning. Cooked food allowed the human brain to grow larger, improving memory, reasoning, and problem-solving. Fire extended waking hours, enabling conversations, planning, and reflection that were impossible in darkness. It was the first step from mere survival to intentional action, allowing humans to interact with their environment in a deliberate way. Fire became the symbol of human ingenuity and the first spark of civilization, illuminating not just the night, but the possibilities of collective imagination and shared knowledge. Level 2. The first tools and human ingenuity. Long before language, humans shaped the world through tools. Around 2.6 million years ago, Homo habilis crafted Oldowan tools, sharp flakes and scrapers designed to cut meat and process plants. Later, Acheulean hand axes appeared, perfectly symmetrical and meticulously shaped, reflecting advanced planning. In East Africa, these tools were taught and shared, creating the earliest examples of cultural transmission. Tool-making required imagination, problem-solving, and dexterity, shaping both mind and body. Early humans learned to plan steps, anticipate results, and refine their methods over generations. Each tool told a story of innovation, survival, and cooperation, marking the beginning of intentional environmental transformation. These tools were not merely practical, they laid the foundation for shared knowledge, experimentation, and the collective intelligence that would drive civilization forward for millennia. Level 3. The birth of social communities. By roughly 200,000 years ago, Homo sapiens were forming small, structured communities. Groups of extended families collaborated for hunting, gathering, and protection. Kinship systems defined responsibilities, rules, and social norms, fostering trust and cooperation. Rituals, from communal meals to dances and songs, strengthened bonds and preserved knowledge across generations. Imagine hunters coordinating a complex ambush on the savannah, using gestures, calls, and intuitive understanding passed down from elders. Social cohesion allowed humans to survive harsh environments and created the first foundations of morality, governance, and cultural identity. Those who could communicate, empathize, and cooperate were more likely to survive, thrive, and pass on their skills, planting the seeds for future cities, societies, and civilizations. The social brain, still evolving, became the engine of collaboration and collective intelligence. Level 4. The emergence of language and symbolic thought. Language transformed human cognition around 100,000 years ago. With words and symbols, Homo sapiens could plan, teach, and preserve collective memory. Cave paintings in Lascaux and Chauvet, dating between 30,000 and 17,000 BCE, show humans depicting animals, hunting scenes, and possibly spiritual concepts. Language enabled humans to narrate experience, share advice about seasons, predators, and resources, and transmit cultural knowledge. Philosophically, it expanded consciousness beyond immediate survival, allowing reflection, abstraction, and imagination. Neuroscience today confirms that symbolic thinking enhances planning, memory, and problem-solving. Humans could now collaborate on a scale previously unimaginable, envision futures, and transmit wisdom across generations. Language became a tool not just for survival, but for shaping the trajectory of civilization itself. Level 5. The Agricultural Revolution. Around 10,000 BCE, in the Fertile Crescent, humans began domesticating plants and animals. Wheat and barley cultivation, alongside sheep and goat domestication, allowed permanent settlements to emerge. Jericho, one of the earliest known towns, appeared with stone walls, granaries, and communal spaces. Agriculture transformed human society. Populations grew, food surpluses supported artisans and traders, and people could invest in knowledge, rituals, and culture rather than mere survival. Irrigation systems, plows, and granaries reflect strategic thinking and foresight. Farming required long-term planning and collaboration, establishing early social hierarchies and organized labor. Civilization moved from mobility and scarcity towards stability and innovation, creating the conditions for cities, trade networks, and cultural flourishing. The agricultural revolution was not just about food. It was about human imagination and society taking root in the earth. Level 6. The dawn of trade and exchange. Trade began as early humans realized the benefits of exchanging goods, knowledge, and skills. Obsidian from Anatolia reached the Levant, seashells traveled hundreds of miles inland, and early textiles were exchanged along river valleys. By 3500 BCE, cities like Uruk in Mesopotamia had bustling marketplaces where grain, pottery, and crafted goods circulated among traders. Trade cultivated trust, negotiation, and mutual dependency. Philosophically, it taught humans about value, cooperation, and interconnection. Economically, it distributed resources and enabled specialization, allowing craftsmen, merchants, and planners to emerge. Trade was a bridge between isolated settlements, connecting societies and spreading ideas, technology, and culture. Through exchange, humans began to realize the power of networks, interdependence, and collective progress. The first hints of a global civilization. Level 7. The rise of cities. By 4000 BCE, humans began living in dense urban centers. Uruk in Sumer had streets, temples, and marketplaces, while Mohenjo-Daro in the Indus Valley, around 2500 BCE, boasted advanced drainage, grid layouts, and organized housing. Cities allowed humans to concentrate knowledge, refine skills, and accumulate wealth. Social structures became complex, with governance, laws, and cultural institutions. Urban life required cooperation, planning, and reflection, fostering artistic, technological, and philosophical innovation. Dense populations demanded conflict resolution, ethical norms, and structured leadership. Cities became hubs for learning, culture, and commerce, demonstrating humanity's ability to organize, innovate, and flourish collectively. Civilization had grown from scattered villages to thriving centers of human ingenuity. Level 8. Writing and recorded knowledge. Writing revolutionized civilization. Around 3200 BCE, Sumerians developed cuneiform to record trade, laws, and religious rituals. Egyptians inscribed hieroglyphs on papyrus, while in China, oracle bones recorded divination and administrative data. Writing extended memory beyond the individual, creating collective knowledge that could survive generations. It allowed governance, legal systems, literature, and science to develop. Philosophically, writing facilitated reflection, codification of ethics, and transmission of wisdom. It enabled humans to learn from the past, communicate complex ideas, and plan for the future, laying the foundation for civilizations capable of cumulative cultural evolution. Level 9. Philosophical thought and reflection. Civilization matured with the emergence of philosophy. In Greece, Socrates, 417 to 399 BCE, emphasized ethical questioning. Plato, 428 to 348 BCE, explored ideals, and Aristotle, 384 to 322 BCE, developed logic and political theory. In India, Buddha, 5th century BCE, taught about suffering and the mind, while Confucius, 551–479 BCE, stressed ethics, hierarchy, and social harmony. Philosophy nurtured reflection, critical thinking, and moral reasoning, guiding societies towards self-awareness, ethical governance, and intellectual curiosity. Neuroscience confirms that reflective thought enhances problem-solving, planning, and emotional regulation. Humanity began to understand itself, society, and the universe with depth, shaping the course of civilization through ideas rather than mere survival. Level 10. Early technology and innovation. Between 3000 BCE and 1000 BCE, humans innovated with metallurgy, transportation, and architecture. Bronze tools and weapons improved efficiency and security. The wheel, appearing around 3500 BCE in Mesopotamia, revolutionized transport. In Egypt, pyramid construction, 2600 BCE, demonstrated monumental engineering, mathematics, and coordination. Irrigation, plows, and early machinery enhanced agriculture and productivity. Technology was the physical expression of human creativity, intellect, and ambition. These innovations allowed societies to expand, thrive, and tackle new challenges, laying the groundwork for empires, trade networks, and eventually the modern technological age. Each invention was a story of curiosity, experimentation, and mastery over nature, demonstrating humanity's unending drive to evolve and shape its world. Level 11. The expansion of empires. By 2500 BCE, the rise of empires marked a dramatic shift in human civilization. In Mesopotamia, the Akkadian Empire, under Sargon of Akkad, unified city-states, creating centralized administration and codified laws. Around the same time, the Old Kingdom of Egypt flourished under pharaohs, who built pyramids as both tombs and symbols of centralized power. Empires required complex bureaucracy, organized taxation, and sophisticated communication across vast territories. Philosophically, the concept of governance and collective responsibility emerged. Humans were no longer confined to small communities. They began managing resources, people, and ideas at unprecedented scales. The growth of empires encouraged the exchange of technologies, philosophies, and artistic traditions. For instance, trade routes connecting Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley, and Egypt carried not only goods like grains, metals, and textiles, but also knowledge, such as astronomical observations, mathematical techniques, and writing systems. The expansion of empires reflected humanity's ability to coordinate large populations, envision long-term objectives, and enforce societal cohesion, marking a fundamental step toward organized, interconnected civilizations. Level 12. The rise of writing systems and literature. Writing evolved beyond simple records to capture ideas, beliefs, and history. Around 2400 BCE, the Sumerians recorded myths like the Epic of Gilgamesh, exploring human mortality, friendship, and the search for meaning. In Egypt, hieroglyphic texts chronicled pharaohs' deeds, religious rituals, and instructions for the afterlife. Writing enabled reflection on life, society, and existence itself. Philosophically, it represented humans' desire to understand their place in the universe and to preserve knowledge across generations. By codifying stories, humans could analyze ethics, consequences, and cultural identity. Literacy facilitated governance, commerce, and education, creating cumulative knowledge that strengthened societies. Writing was no longer a tool for survival alone. It became the foundation of human thought, history, and imagination, allowing civilizations to transcend time and communicate across millennia. Level 13. Mathematics and astronomy. Around 2000 BCE, civilizations across Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Indus Valley developed mathematics and astronomy to manage agriculture, trade, and rituals. Sumerians used cuneiform to calculate areas, debts, and grain distribution, while Egyptians aligned pyramids with stars, integrating cosmic observation into architecture. In Mesopotamia, Babylonian scholars charted planetary movements, creating early calendars. Humans became aware of patterns in nature and time, using reason to predict seasons, celestial events, and resource cycles. Philosophically, mathematics revealed the order behind the apparent chaos of the world. These discoveries were not abstract. They were essential for irrigation planning, taxation, and societal coordination. Awareness of numbers, geometry, and celestial patterns fostered the human capacity to conceptualize, reason, and plan long-term. Through mathematics and astronomy, humans began to grasp the universe's structure and their role within it, laying the foundation for science and rational thought. Level 14. Religion and spirituality. Between 3000 BCE and 500 BCE, organized religions provided frameworks for morality, social cohesion, and understanding life and death. In Egypt, priests interpreted cosmic order through rituals and temple service. The Vedic tradition in India developed hymns and ceremonies exploring Dharma and cosmic principles. In Mesopotamia, ziggurats stood as sacred centers, connecting humans to the divine. Religions guided ethical behavior, explained natural phenomena, and offered solace for mortality. Philosophically, they prompted reflection on the meaning of life, human responsibility, and justice. religion also served practical functions. It justified governance, inspired monumental architecture, and reinforced cultural identity. Spiritual practices, rituals, and moral codes enhanced communal bonds, establishing traditions that endured for centuries. By integrating morality, cosmology, and human purpose, religion shaped societal norms and elevated collective consciousness, allowing civilizations to flourish under shared ideals and ethical frameworks. Level 15. The birth of philosophy. Around 600 BCE, humans in multiple regions began to systematically examine reality, ethics, and knowledge. In Greece, thinkers like Thales, Pythagoras, and Heraclitus asked questions about the nature of existence, change, and mathematics. Socrates, 470–399 BCE, emphasized moral inquiry and self-knowledge, urging citizens to question assumptions. Plato, 428–348 BCE, explored ideal forms, justice, and the nature of reality, while Aristotle, 384–322 BCE, codified logic, ethics, and politics. In India, thinkers like Mahavira and the Buddha reflected on suffering, desire, and consciousness. Philosophically, this period represented humanity's conscious effort to understand life, ethics, and society. Philosophy encouraged critical thinking, self-observation, and inquiry beyond immediate survival. These insights guided leaders, shaped educational practices, and inspired art, science, and governance, reflecting humans' pursuit of wisdom and understanding across cultures. Level 16. Engineering and architecture. Civilizations expressed ingenuity through monumental architecture and engineering feats. In Egypt, the pyramids, 1600 BCE, required precise geometry, workforce coordination, and logistic planning. Mesopotamian ziggurats symbolized both religious devotion and urban organization. In the Indus Valley, cities like Mohenjo-Daro, 2500 BCE, had grid layouts, drainage systems, and standardized bricks. Architectural innovation demonstrated mastery of materials, labor, and knowledge. Engineering extended human capacity, enabling irrigation, construction, and infrastructure. Philosophically, it reflected humans' aspiration to leave enduring marks on the world, connecting practical solutions with cultural and spiritual expression. Through architecture and engineering, humans shaped not only their environment, but their society, culture, and collective memory. Level 17. Trade, exploration, and cultural exchange. Between 2000 BCE and 500 BCE, trade expanded across continents. The Silk Road connected China, India, the Middle East, and Europe, facilitating the exchange of silk, spices, ideas, and religion. Phoenician sailors, 5200 BCE, navigated the Mediterranean, spreading alphabetic writing and commerce. Cultural interaction led to technological innovation, artistic exchange, and philosophical discourse. Humans learned from distant societies, incorporating foreign methods, beliefs, and aesthetics. Trade became a powerful tool of civilization, creating networks that linked economic, intellectual, and spiritual life. Awareness of interconnectedness fostered diplomacy, negotiation, and adaptability, while expanding horizons both literally and metaphorically. Civilizations matured not in isolation, but through engagement, observation, and learning from others. Level 18. Law and governance. Codified law transformed societies. Around 1750 BCE, Hammurabi of Babylon established a legal code, detailing justice, commerce, and social order. In Egypt, pharaohs enforced Ma'at, a principle of truth, balance, and order. In early Greece and India, citizens and rulers debated justice, ethics, and civic duty. Law provided frameworks for behavior, resolved conflict, and protected resources. Philosophically, legal systems reflected collective reasoning, fairness, and societal vision. Governance became more than survival. It was the deliberate shaping of communities, ethics, and culture. Societies that codified law could manage larger populations, maintain stability, and cultivate trust, enabling cultural and technological growth. Level 19. Science and observation. By 500 BCE, empirical observation became a method for understanding the world. Greek philosophers like Thales and Anaximander hypothesized natural laws. Hippocrates, 460 to 370 BCE, studied medicine and anatomy. In India, early texts explored mathematics, astronomy, and medicine. Humans sought patterns in nature, identifying cause and effect. Science arose from curiosity, reflection, and systematic observation. Philosophically, it represented the desire to understand reality through reason and evidence, not superstition alone. Scientific thought informed agriculture, engineering, and navigation, allowing civilizations to predict seasons, optimize resources, and improve lives. The pursuit of knowledge became an enduring human endeavor, bridging curiosity, creativity, and survival. Level 20. Art, music, and cultural expression. Between 3000 BCE and 500 BCE, humans expressed themselves through art, music, and literature. Egyptian tomb paintings, Mesopotamian cylinder seals, and Greek pottery depicted stories, beliefs, and daily life. Music and instruments, from flutes to lyres, accompanied rituals, celebrations, and reflection. Art communicated emotions, values, and identity across generations, fostering social cohesion and personal expression. Philosophically, cultural expression allowed humans to explore meaning, beauty, and morality. Creativity became intertwined with knowledge, religion, and governance, enriching civilization beyond material survival. Artistic traditions became repositories of human experience, bridging past, present, and future, and enabling societies to reflect on existence, aspiration, and communal life. Level 21. The dawn of metallurgy. Around 3000 BCE, humans began to master metals, transforming their relationship with the material world. Copper tools and weapons replaced stone, offering durability and efficiency, while bronze, an alloy of copper and tin, revolutionized agriculture, warfare, and art. In Mesopotamia, bronze plows allowed farmers to till more land, feeding growing populations, while in Egypt, bronze weapons strengthened armies, enabling empires to expand. Metallurgy required knowledge of heat, chemical reactions, and craftsmanship, demonstrating early experimentation and systematic observation. Philosophically, humans began to see the world as something that could be understood, manipulated, and improved through intelligence and skill. Metalworking fostered specialization, trade, and technological innovation as societies exchanged raw materials, techniques, and tools. It was an era where practical ingenuity merged with imagination, laying the foundation for civilizations to grow stronger, more complex, and more interconnected than ever before. Level 22. Urban planning and civil engineering. As cities expanded, urban planning became critical. Around 2500 BCE, Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa in the Indus Valley exemplified advanced city layouts with grid systems, drainage, and standardized brickwork. Streets were organized, public baths constructed, and water management systems ensured sanitation. In Mesopotamia, cities developed walls, temples, and canals to protect and sustain populations. These innovations reflected careful planning, cooperation, and technical knowledge. Philosophically, urban engineering revealed humans' ability to organize complexity, balance individual and collective needs, and create enduring societal structures. Planning extended human foresight, allowing settlements to thrive, withstand challenges, and support cultural, economic, and intellectual growth. Civil engineering became an expression of both practical necessity and creative vision, bridging technology, governance, and social harmony. Level 23. The codification of knowledge. By 2000 BCE, civilizations began to systematically record and codify knowledge. Babylonian mathematicians compiled multiplication tables and calculated areas of land, while Egyptian scribes recorded medical practices on papyrus. In China, oracle bones preserved early astronomical observations and divination practices. Codification transformed scattered wisdom into structured knowledge, enabling societies to transmit skills, predict outcomes, and build on prior discoveries. Philosophically, it represented the human drive to preserve and understand reality, to learn from the past, and to plan for the future. Codification created continuity, allowing subsequent generations to innovate faster, think more deeply, and maintain collective intelligence across centuries. It was the beginning of civilization's self-conscious growth. a society reflecting upon itself through recorded thought. Level 24, Philosophy and Moral Inquiry. Between 600 BCE and 400 BCE, humans in multiple regions sought understanding beyond the material world. Greek philosophers like Socrates emphasized self-knowledge and ethical reflection, while Plato explored ideal forms, justice, and governance. In India, the Buddha offered insights into suffering, desire, and the mind's nature. Confucius in China codified principles of social harmony, morality, and education. Philosophical inquiry encouraged humans to question assumptions, examine behavior, and pursue wisdom. These reflections were not abstract, they influenced law, governance, education, and interpersonal relations. Philosophy became a tool for understanding self and society, fostering critical thinking, empathy, and long-term vision. Human consciousness matured as individuals considered the consequences of their actions and the ethical frameworks of the communities they inhabited. Level 25, Expansion of Trade Networks. By 1500 BCE, trade routes spanned continents. Phoenician merchants sailed the Mediterranean, spreading the alphabet, crafts, and ideas. The Silk Road connected China, India, Persia, and Europe, facilitating the exchange of silk, spices, and philosophies. Trade was not just economic, it was intellectual and cultural, enabling societies to learn from each other, share technology, and adopt new governance models. Philosophically, trade reflected interdependence, reciprocity, and adaptability. Cities along trade routes flourished, becoming centers of art, learning, and diplomacy. Awareness of distant cultures fostered innovation, tolerance, and curiosity. Trade networks demonstrated that human civilization was a web of interconnected societies, each contributing knowledge, values, and creativity to a shared human story. Level 26, Writing, Literature, and Education. From 2500 BCE onward, writing evolved into literature, philosophy, and historical record. The Epic of Gilgamesh in Mesopotamia explored mortality, friendship, and human aspiration. Egyptian texts instructed future generations on rituals, governance, and ethics. In China, early Confucian texts preserved moral principles and social guidelines. Education became formalized. Scribes, apprentices, and philosophers trained the next generation to think, write, and reflect. Literacy allowed humans to store cumulative wisdom, plan strategically, and communicate across time and space. Philosophically, education was the vessel for human consciousness to expand, shaping moral, social, and intellectual capacities. Societies with robust educational systems advanced rapidly, creating the groundwork for law, science, and governance that persisted for centuries. Level 27, Mathematics, Astronomy, and Scientific Thought. Between 1500 BCE and 500 BCE, mathematics and astronomy became central to civilization. Egyptians used geometry to construct pyramids with precise angles and alignments. Babylonians tracked planetary motions, creating early calendars to predict seasons and guide agriculture. In India, scholars developed concepts of zero and positional numerals, enhancing computation. Scientific inquiry arose from observation, reasoning, and experimentation. Humans began to recognize patterns in nature, apply logic, and predict outcomes, moving from superstition to systematic understanding. Philosophy and science intertwined. Understanding numbers, time, and the cosmos encouraged reflection on human existence, destiny, and society's organization. Knowledge became cumulative, empowering civilizations to plan, innovate, and navigate the challenges of survival and governance. Level 28, Governance, Law, and Civic Order. Civilizations matured through structured governance. Hammurabi's Code in Babylon, 1950 BCE, formalized justice, addressing commerce, inheritance, and morality. In Greece, city-states debated civic duty, law, and governance, giving rise to early democracy. In India, Mauryan rulers codified administrative policies and ethical guidelines. Law provided structure, security, and predictability, enabling cities to thrive. Philosophically, it reflected collective reasoning, fairness, and societal vision. Governance shaped human behavior, facilitated trade, and preserved knowledge. Structured authority allowed societies to manage complexity, protect vulnerable populations, and cultivate trust, enabling technological, artistic, and philosophical flourishing. Human civilization became capable of sustaining large populations with shared norms, aspirations, and legal frameworks. Level 29. Art, music, and cultural flourishing. Between 3000 BCE and 500 BCE, civilizations expressed themselves through artistic creation and music. Egyptian murals, Greek pottery, and Mesopotamian reliefs depicted stories, rituals, and everyday life. Music accompanied religious ceremonies, social events, and education, fostering cohesion and emotional expression. Cultural artifacts preserved societal values, moral codes, and historical memory. Philosophically, art and music were reflections of human consciousness, creativity, and collective aspiration. They connected individuals across time, evoking empathy, imagination, and introspection. Cultural flourishing was both a product of stability and a driver of further innovation, shaping human identity, communication, and civilization's enduring legacy. Level 30. Technology and human ingenuity. By 1000 BCE, technological advancement accelerated human capability. Iron smelting replaced bronze, producing stronger tools and weapons. Water management systems, plows, and fortifications improved agriculture and security. Engineering feats like aqueducts and roads facilitated movement, trade, and communication. Technology became a reflection of human curiosity, problem-solving, and foresight. Philosophically, it represented mastery over nature, the capacity to plan for future generations, and the ambition to create enduring achievements. Societies with advanced technology could thrive, expand influence, and develop complex social, cultural, and intellectual systems. Technology intertwined with culture, governance, and philosophy, shaping civilization's trajectory and reflecting humanity's unending drive to evolve. Level 31. The spread of civilizations. By 500 BCE, human civilization had expanded across continents, forming complex societies in Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Indus Valley, China, and Mesoamerica. The Achaemenid Empire in Persia, under Cyrus the Great, spanned vast territories, demonstrating unprecedented governance, diplomacy, and infrastructure. Cities became hubs of administration, culture, and commerce, while roads connected distant regions, allowing ideas, goods, and technologies to circulate. In China, the Zhou dynasty developed political philosophies and early legal codes, fostering stability and intellectual development. Philosophically, the expansion of civilizations reflected human curiosity, adaptability, and ambition. The ability to organize, govern, and connect societies across large geographies demonstrated that humanity was no longer confined to local survival. It could envision and shape a global reality. Trade, diplomacy, and migration facilitated cultural exchange, creating networks of knowledge, art, and science that enriched multiple civilizations simultaneously. Level 32. Religion, myth, and ethical systems. Religious and mythological systems provided humans with frameworks for understanding the universe, morality, and human behavior. In Mesopotamia, myths like the Enuma Elish explained creation and divine order. In Egypt, rituals and temple service reinforced the concept of Ma'at, or cosmic balance. Hinduism and Buddhism in India explored ethical living, karma, and the nature of suffering. Philosophically, religion and myth allowed humans to reflect on mortality, purpose, and ethical responsibility. Ethical systems shaped behavior, societal cohesion, and governance, providing moral guidance and cultural continuity. They influenced laws, rituals, and artistic expression, linking spirituality with practical governance. Religious institutions became centers of learning, preserving knowledge across generations, fostering reflection, and guiding human development. By integrating moral, spiritual, and societal considerations, these systems deepened human consciousness and collective identity. Level 33. Writing, record-keeping, and intellectual growth. The evolution of writing systems around 1500 BCE allowed humans to preserve and transmit complex knowledge. Egyptian hieroglyphs, Mesopotamian cuneiform, and Chinese oracle bone scripts captured trade, history, law, and literature. Literacy enabled education, governance, and cultural continuity. Philosophically, the act of recording knowledge reflected humans' desire to understand, analyze, and improve their world. Written texts encouraged reflection on ethics, governance, and society. The creation of libraries, like those in Nineveh or Alexandria, demonstrated a commitment to collective memory, learning, and intellectual advancement. Writing transformed societies, allowing cumulative knowledge to grow, connecting past wisdom with future innovation. Civilizations became conscious of their achievements, mistakes, and potential, reflecting on human experience and shaping the trajectory of history. Level 34, Philosophy, Ethics, and Political Thought. By 500 BCE, philosophical inquiry flourished across the world. In Greece, Socrates challenged assumptions, promoting self-reflection and ethical reasoning. Plato explored justice, ideal governance, and the nature of reality. Aristotle codified logic, ethics, and politics, emphasizing empirical observation and rational thought. In India, the Buddha taught awareness, compassion, and understanding of desire and suffering. Confucius in China developed principles of social harmony, duty, and moral education. Philosophy allowed humans to question existence, morality, and governance. It encouraged critical thinking, debate, and introspection, shaping education, law, and political structures. Philosophical traditions enhanced consciousness, allowing societies to consider ethical frameworks, long-term planning, and the collective good. The pursuit of wisdom became a hallmark of advanced civilization, influencing policy, culture, and human thought across generations. Level 35, Science, Observation, and the Natural World. From 500 BCE onward, empirical observation became central to understanding the world. Greek thinkers like Thales, Anaximander, and Hippocrates investigated natural laws, medicine, and anatomy. In China, scholars studied astronomy, medicine, and agriculture. Observation, experimentation, and reasoning allowed humans to identify patterns, predict events, and develop technology. Philosophically, science represented the human effort to comprehend reality, moving beyond superstition towards systematic knowledge. Applications included agriculture, architecture, navigation, and medicine, enhancing societal stability and well-being. Science encouraged curiosity, experimentation, and reflection, fostering a mindset of problem-solving and discovery. Civilizations that prioritized observation and knowledge accumulated power, cultural richness, and resilience, demonstrating humanity's growing mastery over nature and understanding of the cosmos. Level 36, Trade, Economy, and Cultural Exchange. Trade networks expanded and diversified between 500 BCE and 200 CE. The Silk Road connected China, India, Persia, and the Mediterranean, facilitating the movement of silk, spices, precious metals, and philosophical ideas. Phoenician and Greek traders navigated the Mediterranean, spreading alphabetic writing, technologies, and art. Trade was both practical and intellectual, creating opportunities for cultural exchange, technological diffusion, and social learning. Economically, it fostered wealth, specialization, and urban growth. Philosophically, trade reflected interdependence, negotiation, and adaptability. Societies learned to cooperate across distances, integrate foreign knowledge, and adapt innovations to local needs. Trade was a conduit for ideas as much as goods, connecting civilizations and shaping the global trajectory of human development. Level 37, Urbanization and Infrastructure. By 500 BCE, cities had become central to political, economic, and cultural life. Athens, Rome, and Chang'an exemplified urban planning, integrating roads, aqueducts, markets, and public spaces. Cities concentrated knowledge, talent, and resources, enabling specialization, governance, and intellectual growth. Urbanization demanded sophisticated administration, law enforcement, and infrastructure. Philosophically, cities represented the human ability to organize complexity and balance individual needs with collective welfare. They were arenas for social interaction, education, artistic expression, and political debate. The urban experience fostered cultural identity, reflection on society, and the pursuit of innovation. Civilizations became more interconnected, dynamic, and capable of sustaining diverse populations through urban development. Level 38, Arts, Literature, and Expression. Artistic and literary expression flourished from 500 BCE onward. Greek tragedies, Indian epics like the Mahabharata, and Chinese poetry conveyed values, moral dilemmas, and societal ideals. Art communicated human experience, emotions, and aspirations, transcending time and geography. Music, sculpture, and painting enriched cultural life, reflected identity, and inspired contemplation. Philosophically, art and literature allowed humans to explore meaning, beauty, and morality, enhancing self-reflection and empathy. Cultural expression preserved collective memory, transmitted values, and nurtured creativity. Societies that valued arts and literature cultivated intellectual curiosity, emotional depth, and philosophical inquiry, contributing to a richer, more reflective civilization. Level 39. Law, Justice, and Civic Responsibility. Between 500 BCE and 200 CE, law became central to societal stability. Roman legal codes, Greek civic laws, and Indian Dharma Shastra codified ethics, property rights, and civic duties. Law provided predictability, resolved conflict, and protected the weak, enabling larger, more complex societies to function cohesively. Philosophically, legal systems reflected collective reasoning, fairness, and societal values. Governance and law intertwined with ethics, trade, and education, guiding human behavior towards stability and progress. Citizens were not passive. Civic responsibility, debate, and participation shaped society's evolution. The codification of justice marked humanity's conscious effort to maintain order, fairness, and collective well-being, balancing individual freedom with social cohesion. Level 40. Technology, innovation, and human ingenuity. By 200 CE, technological innovation accelerated human progress. Iron and steel tools enhanced agriculture, warfare, and construction. Roads, bridges, and aqueducts improved transport, trade, and urban life. Mechanical devices, such as water clocks and early gears, demonstrated engineering ingenuity. Technology reflected human curiosity, experimentation, and problem-solving. Philosophically, it represented mastery over nature, long-term planning, and ambition to create enduring achievements. Societies with advanced technology thrived, expanded influence, and developed complex governance, commerce, and cultural systems. Innovation became a hallmark of civilization, enabling humans to transform the environment, connect distant regions, and leave lasting legacies that shaped future generations. Level 41. The Classical Empires. Between 500 BCE and 200 CE, classical empires dominated large regions, shaping governance, culture, and human thought. The Roman Empire, under Augustus, unified vast territories across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East through roads, law, and administration. The Mauryan Empire in India, under Ashoka, implemented governance guided by ethics, including edicts promoting justice, non-violence, and welfare. In China, the Han Dynasty advanced bureaucracy, Confucian education, and trade along the Silk Road. Classical empires exemplified human capability to organize vast populations, administer resources, and maintain cultural cohesion. Philosophically, they reflected the balance of power, ethics, and societal order, demonstrating that civilization was more than survival. It was the deliberate shaping of human life on a continental scale. Roads, aqueducts, and communication systems facilitated trade, intellectual exchange, and cultural diffusion, connecting civilizations in ways that had never existed before. Level 42. Philosophy, Ethics, and Governance. During this period, philosophy and political thought flourished alongside empire building. In Greece, Stoicism and Epicureanism encouraged reflection on virtue, happiness, and the control of desire. Confucian and legalist philosophies in China structured society, emphasizing ethics, hierarchy, and civic duty. Indian philosophical schools debated dharma, karma, and the nature of consciousness. Philosophical inquiry guided rulers and citizens, shaping law, governance, and education. Critical thinking and reflection became central to leadership and civic life, influencing policies, diplomacy, and cultural norms. Philosophically, this period represented humanity's effort to reconcile power, morality, and society. Thoughtful governance, guided by ethical principles, strengthened stability, and allowed intellectual, cultural, and technological progress to flourish. Level 43. Science, medicine, Adpamish, Grusumshimasis, Memsison, and observation. Empirical knowledge advanced significantly between 500 BCE and 200 CE. Greek physicians like Hippocrates laid the foundation for modern medicine, emphasizing observation, diagnosis, and natural explanations for disease. In India, Ayurveda codified knowledge of herbs, treatments, and anatomy, integrating philosophy with practical health. Chinese scholars developed acupuncture, astronomy, and engineering innovations. Observation, experimentation, and recording of results became methods to understand the natural world systematically. Philosophically, the pursuit of knowledge reflected humanity's desire to comprehend reality, improve life, and plan for the future. Medicine, astronomy, and natural philosophy were interconnected, enabling civilizations to predict seasons, manage health, and solve practical challenges. Scientific inquiry demonstrated that human intellect could transform survival into deliberate understanding and innovation. Level 44. Trade, connectivity, and cultural exchange. By 200 BCE, trade networks connected continents, enabling commerce, cultural diffusion, and intellectual exchange. The Silk Road facilitated the movement of silk, spices, ideas, and religious practices between China, India, Persia, and the Mediterranean. Phoenician and Greek traders spread writing, art, and technologies across the Mediterranean. Exchange of knowledge, goods, and beliefs enriched societies, inspiring innovations in governance, art, and science. Philosophically, trade reflected interdependence, diplomacy, and adaptability. Cities along trade routes became centers of learning, economic growth, and cultural synthesis. Humans recognized the power of networks, realizing that interconnected societies could thrive collectively, sharing wisdom, technology, and creativity across vast distances. Trade became a driver not only of wealth, but also of civilization's intellectual and cultural expansion. Level 45. Urbanization, architecture, and engineering. Between 500 BCE and 200 CE, urban centers became marvels of engineering and architecture. Rome boasted roads, aqueducts, amphitheaters, and public baths. Chang'an in China featured planned streets, markets, and administrative centers. Cities facilitated governance, commerce, education, and cultural activity. Engineering feats, from bridges to irrigation systems, reflected human ingenuity and mastery over natural forces. Philosophically, urban development symbolized the organization of complexity and human foresight. Infrastructure allowed societies to concentrate resources, nurture talent, and coordinate large populations effectively. The built environment became a reflection of cultural values, political ambition, and practical problem-solving, enabling civilizations to flourish socially, economically, and intellectually. Level 46. Literature, art, and cultural legacy. Classical civilizations produced enduring literary and artistic achievements. Greek epics, Indian Mahabharata and Ramayana, Roman poetry, and Chinese classics documented human experience, moral dilemmas, and societal ideals. Sculpture, frescoes, and architecture conveyed religious devotion, civic pride, and historical memory. Music and theater enhanced cultural cohesion and emotional expression. Philosophically, art and literature allowed humans to explore meaning, identity, and morality. They were repositories of collective wisdom, linking generations and preserving values. Cultural expression shaped civilization's legacy, inspiring reflection, empathy, and intellectual curiosity. Artistic and literary achievements became a mirror of society, reflecting ideals, aspirations, and philosophical understanding. Level 47. Law, justice, and civic organization. Codified law became essential for societal stability. Roman law, the 12 Tables, and legal commentaries provided clear rules for property, contracts, and civic responsibilities. In China, Confucian and legalist principles guided governance, education, and social conduct. Mauryan edicts in India promoted justice, non-violence, and welfare. Legal systems created predictability, resolved conflict, and balanced individual and societal needs. Philosophically, law reflected rational thought, fairness, and collective reasoning. Civic organization allowed cities to manage complexity, coordinate resources, and maintain public trust. Governance intertwined with morality, education, and trade, fostering resilient, ethical, and thriving societies. Level 48. Technology, tools, and innovation. Technological progress between 500 BCE and 200 CE transformed human capability. Iron and steel tools improved agriculture, construction, and warfare. Watermills, catapults, and early machinery demonstrated engineering ingenuity. Navigation techniques enabled long-distance trade and exploration. Technology reflected problem-solving, foresight, and experimentation. Philosophically, innovation represented humans' ability to understand, manipulate, and improve their environment. Societies with advanced tools could expand influence, manage resources efficiently, and support cultural, educational, and scientific advancement. Human creativity and technology became a hallmark of civilization, connecting practical needs with imagination and strategic vision. Level 49. Education, knowledge, preservation, and intellectual growth. Formal education systems emerged, preserving knowledge and fostering critical thought. Greek academies, Indian gurukulas, and Chinese Confucian schools trained scholars, administrators, and thinkers. Libraries, like the one in Alexandria, safeguarded texts, philosophies, and scientific discoveries. Education enabled cumulative knowledge, reflection, and societal progress. Philosophically, teaching and learning became the means to cultivate wisdom, morality, and cultural identity. Knowledge preservation allowed civilizations to reflect on their achievements and mistakes, plan for the future, and transmit intellectual heritage. Societies that valued education created intellectual continuity, enabling innovation, governance, and philosophical inquiry to flourish across generations. Level 50. The interconnected civilization. By 200 CE, human civilization had reached unprecedented interconnectedness. Trade, communication, philosophy, and art linked distant societies, creating networks of knowledge and culture. Empires, cities, and institutions demonstrated collective planning, foresight, and intellectual achievement. Humans were no longer isolated. They shared ideas, technologies, and ethical systems across continents. Philosophically, interconnectedness reflected the recognition of interdependence, responsibility, and collective potential. Societies thrived through collaboration, learning, and cultural synthesis. Civilization had evolved from small communities to vast interlinked networks capable of sustaining complex governance, economic systems, and intellectual life. This level marked humanity's growing awareness of itself as a global actor, shaping history, culture, and the future of civilization itself. Level 51. The Age of Exploration and Connectivity. Between 200 CE and 800 CE, human societies began to extend their reach across land and sea. Maritime trade expanded in the Indian Ocean, connecting East Africa, the Middle East, India, and Southeast Asia. Arab merchants facilitated the exchange of spices, textiles, and knowledge, spreading mathematics, astronomy, and medicine. Overland, the Silk Road remained a conduit for goods, ideas, and religions, linking China, Persia, and Europe. Exploration demonstrated human curiosity, courage, and strategic thinking. Philosophically, it reflected a growing awareness of the interconnectedness of people, resources, and knowledge. Civilizations realized that understanding distant lands and cultures could enrich their own, fostering diplomacy, innovation, and cultural exchange. Expansion was not merely physical, it expanded human consciousness, teaching lessons in adaptability, collaboration, and vision. Level 52. Medieval empires and governance. During this period, empires evolved new forms of governance. The Byzantine Empire preserved Roman administrative and legal systems while integrating Christianity as a unifying force. In India, the Gupta Empire encouraged education, arts, and science under a structured bureaucracy. In China, the Tang dynasty emphasized Confucian principles, civil service exams, and centralized governance. Philosophically, governance reflected the balance between authority, morality, and social welfare. Empires managed complex populations, facilitated trade, and protected cultural heritage. Effective administration became essential for stability, innovation, and prosperity. Civilizations began to see governance not just as control, but as stewardship, a responsibility to maintain order, cultivate knowledge, and ensure the well-being of citizens across generations. Level 53, Science, Astronomy, and Mathematics. Between 200 CE and 800 CE, science continued to develop across continents. Indian mathematicians advanced concepts of zero, decimals, and algebra, while Islamic scholars preserved and expanded Greek and Roman knowledge. Chinese astronomers observed celestial events and refined calendars. Empirical observation and systematic reasoning allowed humans to predict natural phenomena, enhance agriculture, and develop engineering solutions. Philosophically, science embodied the human desire to understand reality, reduce uncertainty, and improve life. Mathematics, astronomy, and empirical research were interconnected with philosophy and governance, influencing navigation, architecture, and trade. Knowledge became cumulative and accessible across cultures, demonstrating humanity's capacity for rational thought, innovation, and intellectual collaboration. Level 54. Art, Literature, and Cultural Identity. Art and literature flourished as vehicles of expression, identity, and reflection. Islamic calligraphy and architecture celebrated spiritual devotion and mathematical precision. In Europe, early medieval art preserved classical and religious traditions, while Indian epics and Chinese poetry explored ethics, heroism, and human nature. Music, theatre, and visual art provided emotional depth, communal cohesion, and moral reflection. Philosophically, culture allowed humans to explore meaning, morality, and beauty. Art became both a reflection and driver of civilization, preserving memory, inspiring innovation, and cultivating empathy. Through creative expression, humans documented experience, transmitted knowledge, and nurtured the imagination, reinforcing civilization's intellectual and emotional foundation. Level 55. Law, Ethics, and Social Order. Codified legal systems and ethical principles guided societies between 200 CE and 800 CE. The Justinian Code in Byzantium systematized Roman law, while Islamic Sharia codified moral, social, and legal conduct. In China, Confucian ethics informed governance, education, and family structure. Philosophically, law reflected the human quest for fairness, stability, and societal harmony. Legal systems ensured predictability, resolved conflicts, and promoted civic responsibility. Social order allowed economies, trade, and cultural expression to thrive. By embedding ethics into governance, civilizations maintained continuity, encouraged reflection, and cultivated trust among citizens, ensuring stability and resilience in complex societies. Level 56. Education, Knowledge Transmission, and Libraries. Between 200 CE and 800 CE, formal and informal education preserved and expanded knowledge. Monastic schools in Europe safeguarded texts, while Islamic madrasas fostered mathematics, astronomy, and philosophy. In India, centers of learning like Nalanda transmitted religious, philosophical, and scientific knowledge. Libraries collected manuscripts, ensuring continuity across generations. Philosophically, education was the vessel for human consciousness, cultivating critical thinking, morality, and reflection. Knowledge transmission allowed civilizations to innovate, adapt, and govern effectively. Scholars became bridges between past and future, connecting wisdom across cultures. Education strengthened identity, inspired inquiry, and ensured the longevity of human intellectual achievement. Level 57. Religion, Philosophy, and Moral Reflection. Between 200 CE and 800 CE, spiritual and philosophical thought guided societies. Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, and Hinduism provided ethical frameworks, cosmology, and communal cohesion. Philosophical inquiry in Europe, Asia, and the Middle East explored morality, consciousness, and human purpose. Religion and philosophy influenced governance, education, and law, encouraging reflection on ethical responsibility and societal harmony. Humans grappled with existence, duty, and the nature of happiness. These systems facilitated cultural continuity, moral reasoning, and intellectual growth. Philosophically, they represented the human drive to understand life, align behavior with principles, and create meaningful structures for civilization. Level 58. Trade, exploration, and knowledge exchange. Trade routes expanded knowledge and connectivity between 200 CE and 800 CE. The Silk Road, Indian Ocean maritime networks, and Mediterranean trade facilitated the exchange of goods, technologies, and ideas. Knowledge, scientific observation, and philosophical concepts traveled alongside commodities, enriching societies. Philosophically, trade emphasized interdependence, adaptability, and collective progress. Civilizations learned from one another, integrating foreign innovations into local culture. Exchange accelerated technological advancement, literacy, and cultural synthesis, illustrating that human progress was a networked, cooperative endeavor. Trade became both economic and intellectual, reflecting humanity's ability to connect across distances and enhance collective civilization. Level 59. Urbanization, infrastructure, and public works. Between 200 CE and 800 CE, urban centers became hubs of administration, trade, and culture. Baghdad, Chang'an, and Constantinople exemplified advanced infrastructure, including roads, aqueducts, markets, and educational centers. Cities concentrated talent, knowledge, and governance, fostering innovation and cultural synthesis. Philosophically, urban planning reflected foresight, organization, and balance between individual and collective needs. Public works enhanced quality of life, encouraged commerce, and facilitated cultural and intellectual exchange. Civilizations thrived in well-structured urban environments, demonstrating that thoughtful planning and infrastructure were essential for sustaining complex societies over centuries. Level 60. Technology, engineering, and human ingenuity. Technological progress between 200 CE and 800 CE transformed civilization. Advances in metallurgy, irrigation, navigation, and architecture improved agriculture, trade, and urban life. Mechanical devices, water wheels, and bridges reflected engineering ingenuity and experimentation. Philosophically, technology embodied human curiosity, foresight, and the capacity to shape the environment. Innovation allowed civilizations to expand influence, support population growth, and create enduring cultural, scientific, and intellectual achievements. Human ingenuity during this era laid the groundwork for later Renaissance and scientific breakthroughs, demonstrating the persistent drive to understand, improve, and leave a lasting impact on the world. Level 61. The Carolingian and Tang Empires. Between 800 CE and 900 CE, the Carolingian Empire in Europe and the Tang dynasty in China exemplified the revival of centralized governance, cultural flowering, and intellectual growth. Charlemagne, crowned emperor of the Romans in 800 CE, implemented administrative reforms, standardized currency, and promoted literacy through monastic schools. Simultaneously, the Tang dynasty oversaw economic expansion, standardized education through Confucian examinations, and fostered arts and poetry. Roads and canals facilitated trade, allowing ideas, technologies, and cultural practices to circulate widely. Philosophically, these empires reflected humanity's ability to consolidate knowledge, organize society, and cultivate intellectual and cultural life. They demonstrated that governance, education, and trade could work synergistically, creating environments in which civilization flourished. The combination of political foresight, moral guidance, and practical administration provided enduring models for future generations. Level 62. Monasticism and knowledge preservation. During this period, monastic institutions in Europe and Buddhist monasteries in Asia preserved and transmitted knowledge across centuries. Manuscripts were copied, historical records maintained, and libraries developed to ensure continuity. These centers became hubs of scholarship, medical practice, and philosophy. In addition to spiritual practice, monastic life emphasized discipline, observation, and reflection, cultivating intellectual and moral growth. Philosophically, this preservation of knowledge reflected humanity's foresight, commitment to learning, and reverence for accumulated wisdom. Scholars acted as bridges between past and future, safeguarding discoveries that would fuel the European Renaissance, Islamic Golden Age, and other intellectual revivals. Knowledge preservation demonstrated that civilization's endurance relied not merely on conquest or trade, but on conscious cultivation, reflection, and education. Level 63, Islamic Golden Age and Scientific Flourishing. From 800 CE to 1000 CE, the Islamic Golden Age transformed the intellectual landscape of the world. Scholars in Baghdad, Cordoba, and Samarkand translated Greek, Indian, and Persian texts into Arabic, preserving and expanding knowledge in mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and philosophy. Algebra, advanced optics, and medical treatises reflected systematic reasoning and empirical observation. Trade routes enabled the exchange of ideas between Europe, Asia, and Africa, creating a global network of learning. Philosophically, this era emphasized curiosity, rationality, and ethical application of knowledge. The pursuit of wisdom became intertwined with societal progress, religion, and civic life. The integration of science, philosophy, and practical application demonstrated that civilizations could advance intellectually while maintaining moral and social coherence. Level 64, European Medieval Innovation. Between 900 CE and 1100 CE, Europe saw incremental technological and social innovations. Watermills, windmills, improved plows, and architectural techniques like the Romanesque vault increased productivity and efficiency. Agricultural surpluses supported population growth, urbanization, and trade. Guilds formalized skills, preserving knowledge and improving craftsmanship. Philosophically, innovation reflected human adaptability, problem-solving, and foresight. Societies learned to optimize resources, integrate technology into daily life, and support economic and cultural expansion. These innovations were cumulative, building on previous knowledge while laying the foundation for later scientific and industrial advancements. Human ingenuity demonstrated a consistent drive to improve living conditions, expand influence, and create enduring achievements. Level 65, Trade Networks and Global Exchange. By 900 CE, trade networks spanned continents. The Silk Road connected China, India, Persia, and Europe, facilitating the exchange of silk, spices, gold, and ideas. Indian Ocean maritime trade linked East Africa, the Arabian Peninsula, and Southeast Asia. Merchants not only transported goods, but also transmitted knowledge, religious ideas, and cultural practices. Philosophically, trade highlighted human interdependence, adaptability, and curiosity. Civilizations learned from one another, integrating innovations, philosophies, and technologies into local practice. Exchange fostered tolerance, diplomacy, and cultural synthesis, demonstrating that human progress is amplified through cooperation and shared understanding. Trade became a vector for both material wealth and intellectual enrichment, creating networks that strengthened the resilience and creativity of civilization. Level 66, Urbanization, Infrastructure, and Cultural Hubs. Between 900 CE and 1200 CE, cities became centers of commerce, education, and culture. Cordoba, Baghdad, Venice, and Chang'an exemplified urban planning, integrating markets, educational institutions, roads, and water systems. Cities concentrated talent, resources, and knowledge, facilitating intellectual and artistic exchange. Public infrastructure improved quality of life, supported trade, and fostered civic pride. Philosophically, urbanization reflected human capacity to organize complexity, balance collective and individual needs, and cultivate cultural identity. Cities became incubators for innovation, scholarship, and cultural expression. Infrastructure and urban planning demonstrated the interplay between practicality and vision, creating environments where civilization could thrive sustainably over centuries. Level 67, Literature, Arts, and Human Expression. Between 900 CE and 1200 CE, art and literature flourished globally. Islamic calligraphy, Persian poetry, Chinese landscape painting, and European illuminated manuscripts preserved human thought, emotion, and moral reflection. Music, theater, and visual arts conveyed stories, ethics, and cultural ideals. Philosophically, creative expression allowed humans to explore identity, morality, and the human condition. Artistic achievements were repositories of collective wisdom, preserving values, historical memory, and imaginative insight. Culture shaped intellectual life, providing both inspiration and reflection. Artistic expression demonstrated that civilization was not merely survival and administration, but also the conscious cultivation of meaning, beauty, and shared human experience. Level 68. Law, Ethics, and Civic Responsibility. Between 900 CE and 1200 CE, legal systems evolved to manage increasingly complex societies. European monarchs codified customary law, Islamic scholars refined Sharia, and Chinese dynasties integrated Confucian principles into governance. Law provided structure, resolved conflicts, and facilitated trade and governance. Philosophically, legal systems represented humanity's striving for fairness, order, and moral integrity. Civic responsibility became a critical aspect of societal stability, as citizens engaged in commerce, education, and local governance. Ethical reasoning guided lawmaking, balancing individual rights with collective welfare. Civilizations demonstrated that moral principles, codified law, and active participation were essential for enduring social cohesion and intellectual growth. Level 69. Technology, Engineering, and Problem Solving. Technological innovation between 900 CE and 1200 CE transformed daily life, commerce, and defense. Advancements included mechanical clocks, water mills, improved shipbuilding, siege engines, and architectural techniques. These technologies reflected empirical observation, creativity, and problem solving. Philosophically, innovation exemplified human curiosity, adaptability, and foresight. Societies capable of applying knowledge practically thrived, creating surplus, facilitating trade, and enabling cultural and intellectual endeavors. The integration of technology with education, governance, and cultural life highlighted civilization's ability to harness intellect for survival, growth, and long-term progress. Human ingenuity became a continuous thread, linking past knowledge with future discovery. Level 70. Knowledge, Reflection, and Civilizational Consciousness. By 1200 CE, civilizations exhibited unprecedented complexity, interconnection, and intellectual depth. Knowledge from prior centuries, mathematics, science, philosophy, law, and literature, was preserved, expanded, and applied across continents. Urban centers, trade networks, and cultural institutions fostered the exchange of ideas, enhancing collective understanding. Philosophically, this level reflected a growing civilizational consciousness. Humans recognized the cumulative nature of progress, the interdependence of societies, and the responsibility to preserve and transmit wisdom. Reflection, education, and cultural synthesis allowed civilizations to adapt, innovate, and envision the future. Humanity's capacity for foresight, creativity, and moral reasoning became the foundation upon which future epochs, Renaissance, Enlightenment, and modernity, would build. This stage marked a deliberate shaping of human experience, intellect, and society, where the collective mind became increasingly aware of its own potential and trajectory. Level 71. The High Middle Ages and Global Expansion. Between 1200 CE and 1300 CE, the High Middle Ages marked an era of political consolidation, cultural flowering, and intellectual growth. Europe witnessed the rise of Gothic cathedrals, universities, and burgeoning trade networks connecting cities like Venice, Florence, and Bruges. In Asia, the Mongol Empire unified vast territories, facilitating communication, trade, and cultural exchange across Eurasia. Philosophically, this period reflected humanity's ambition to explore, connect, and understand the world beyond local confines. Innovations in governance, infrastructure, and education demonstrated that civilization thrived when curiosity, organization, and collaboration intersected. Trade, scholarship, and diplomacy became tools to expand both material and intellectual horizons, creating networks that linked diverse cultures across continents. Level 72. The Islamic Golden Age continues. During this period, the Islamic world continued its remarkable contributions to mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and philosophy. Scholars like al-Khwarizmi, Avicenna, and Alhazen advanced algebra, optics, and medical knowledge. Libraries in Baghdad, Cairo, and Cordoba preserved and expanded classical knowledge while producing original scholarship. Philosophically, this era emphasized rationality, ethics, and the pursuit of truth. bridging science, religion, and practical application. Trade networks carried not only goods, but also ideas, allowing European, African, and Asian societies to benefit from innovations in medicine, navigation, and engineering. Intellectual curiosity became a shared human enterprise, reinforcing the concept that knowledge transcends borders and cultures. Level 73. European Universities and Scholarly Renaissance. Between 1200 CE and 1400 CE, Europe experienced a revival of learning through the establishment of universities in Bologna, Paris, and Oxford. Scholarly inquiry focused on philosophy, law, medicine, and theology. Manuscripts preserved from classical Greece and Rome were studied, translated, and expanded upon. Scholarly debate encouraged critical thinking, rational analysis, and ethical reflection. Philosophically, universities represented humanity's recognition of the cumulative nature of knowledge and the importance of structured education. Education became a means to cultivate leadership, wisdom, and moral responsibility, influencing governance, trade, and cultural development. These institutions reflected the intentional shaping of human intellect, emphasizing reflection, debate, and the transmission of collective wisdom. Level 74. Art, Architecture, and Human Expression. Between 1200 CE and 1400 CE, art and architecture flourished across civilizations. Gothic cathedrals with intricate stained glass, Persian miniature painting, and Chinese ink landscapes reflected technical mastery and cultural values. Literature explored human experience, morality, and aspiration, as seen in Dante's Divine Comedy or Rumi's poetry. Philosophically, art and literature enabled societies to examine ethics, beauty, and identity. Artistic expression became a mirror of civilization, documenting achievement, inspiring innovation, and fostering empathy. Creative endeavors transcended mere utility, connecting humans to universal questions of meaning, morality, and the human condition. Cultural achievements demonstrated civilization's capacity to integrate intellect, spirituality, and aesthetics into a cohesive societal vision. Level 75. Exploration, trade, and global connectivity. Between 1300 CE and 1500 CE, maritime exploration expanded horizons. Arab, Chinese, and later European navigators extended trade networks, linking continents and facilitating cultural, scientific, and economic exchange. The compass, astrolabe, and improved shipbuilding enabled longer voyages, while trade carried not only goods, but also ideas, religions, and technologies. Philosophically, exploration reflected curiosity, adaptability, and the human drive to discover. Civilizations understood that engagement with distant lands enriched knowledge, culture, and innovation. The exchange of ideas, techniques, and ethics reinforced the interconnectedness of humanity, illustrating that civilization thrives not in isolation, but through interaction, cooperation, and shared intellectual pursuit. Level 76. Scientific observation and technological advancement. Between 1300 CE and 1500 CE, systematic observation and technological progress accelerated. Scholars observed celestial bodies, experimented with optics, and refined mechanical devices. Engineering achievements, from clockmaking to improved military technology, demonstrated empirical problem-solving. Philosophically, science became a structured pursuit of truth, blending observation with reflection. Humans learned to predict natural phenomena, optimize resources, and enhance daily life. This period highlighted civilization's capacity to integrate intellectual, practical, and ethical considerations, advancing knowledge in ways that would underpin the Renaissance. Observation, experimentation, and documentation became key pillars of sustained human development. Level 77. Cultural synthesis and knowledge transmission. Between 1300 CE and 1500 CE, civilization synthesized knowledge across regions. Islamic scholarship, Chinese technology, Indian mathematics, and European classical traditions combined to produce new insights. Manuscripts, translation movements, and trade facilitated the exchange of scientific, philosophical, and literary knowledge. Philosophically, this period emphasized the universality of wisdom, illustrating that knowledge transcends borders and cultures. Societies that embraced intellectual synthesis enhanced creativity, innovation, and governance. Cultural synthesis demonstrated humanity's ability to learn from diverse sources, integrate wisdom, and create complex, resilient societies capable of long-term progress. Level 78. Law, Ethics, and Civic Development. Between 1300 CE and 1500 CE, legal and civic systems evolved to manage growing complexity. European monarchies refined centralized law codes, Islamic scholars integrated Sharia with local governance, and Chinese dynasties maintained Confucian bureaucratic oversight. Law structured society, resolved conflicts, and guided ethical behavior. Philosophically, governance reflected moral responsibility, fairness, and collective well-being. Civic institutions enabled trade, education, and cultural activity. Creating resilient societies, ethical governance, codified law, and active civic participation became essential to sustain civilization, balancing individual freedom with societal cohesion and long-term stability. Level 79. Education, Reflection, and Intellectual Flourishing. Between 1300 CE and 1500 CE, intellectual life expanded through universities, monasteries, and scholarly networks. Philosophy, medicine, astronomy, mathematics, and theology were systematically studied and transmitted. Education promoted critical thinking, reflection, and moral reasoning. Philosophically, cultivating knowledge became a societal imperative, linking education with leadership, innovation, and cultural continuity. Knowledge preserved from prior civilizations allowed for synthesis and innovation, laying the groundwork for transformative movements like the Renaissance. Reflection, study, and scholarship became engines of societal progress, demonstrating the conscious shaping of civilization through intellect and moral insight. Level 80. Civilization's Maturation and Global Perspective. By 1500 CE, human civilization had achieved unprecedented complexity, connectivity, and intellectual depth. Trade networks, cities, universities, and empires created a global web of cultural, scientific, and philosophical exchange. Humans recognized the cumulative nature of knowledge, the value of cross-cultural engagement, and the responsibility to preserve and transmit wisdom. Philosophically, this level reflected a civilizational consciousness aware of its achievements, challenges, and potential. Reflection, governance, innovation, and culture converged to create resilient societies capable of long-term growth. Humanity's capacity for foresight, creativity, and moral reasoning became increasingly evident, preparing the foundation for the transformative eras of exploration, Renaissance, and modernity. Level 81. The Renaissance awakens. Between 1400 CE and 1500 CE, Europe entered the Renaissance, a period of rebirth in art, science, and human thought. Cities like Florence, Venice, and Rome became centers of intellectual exploration and artistic innovation. Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Raphael created works blending observation, imagination, and mastery of form, demonstrating humanity's capacity for synthesis between intellect and creativity. Philosophically, the Renaissance represented a conscious revival of classical knowledge combined with new observation, emphasizing the dignity of human reason and potential. Scholars revisited Greek and Roman texts, expanding understanding of philosophy, ethics, governance, and science. Human curiosity, empirical observation, and artistic expression converged, revealing that civilization flourishes when reflection, creativity, and practical skill are harmonized. Level 82. Scientific Observation and Exploration. Between 1400 CE and 1550 CE, systematic observation became central to understanding the natural world. Advances in anatomy, astronomy, and physics challenged traditional assumptions. Nicholas Copernicus proposed the heliocentric model, reshaping the understanding of Earth's place in the cosmos. Exploration by navigators like Vasco da Gama and Christopher Columbus expanded geographic knowledge, connecting continents and cultures in unprecedented ways. Philosophically, exploration reflected human curiosity, courage, and the desire to comprehend reality. Societies that embraced observation, documentation, and empirical reasoning increased their capacity for innovation, trade, and cultural synthesis. Knowledge became both practical and philosophical, guiding navigation, governance, medicine, and technology. Level 83. Humanism and intellectual flourishing. Between 1450 CE and 1600 CE, humanism emerged as a philosophical and educational movement, emphasizing the value of human experience, critical thinking, and moral reflection. Thinkers like Erasmus, Petrarch, and Thomas More promoted the study of classical texts, ethics, and civic responsibility. Humanism inspired reforms in education, art, and governance, encouraging self-reflection and rational inquiry. Philosophically, this level demonstrated humanity's growing awareness of individual potential, moral responsibility, and societal contribution. Humanism bridged classical knowledge with contemporary insight, shaping a worldview where intellect, creativity, and ethics were central to human progress. Education, reflection, and moral reasoning became instruments of societal transformation, preparing civilizations for scientific, political, and cultural revolutions. Level 84. Global trade and intercontinental connectivity. Between 1500 CE and 1600 CE, trade networks expanded on an unprecedented scale. European maritime powers established trade routes to Africa, Asia, and the Americas, exchanging spices, textiles, metals, and knowledge. Islamic merchants facilitated knowledge transfer from the Middle East to Europe, integrating mathematics, medicine, menin, and philosophy. Philosophically, global trade reflected human adaptability, collaboration, and interconnectedness. Societies learned that engagement with distant cultures enriched intellectual, technological, and artistic achievement. Exchange networks became both economic and intellectual, enabling civilizations to innovate collectively and respond to challenges with shared knowledge and experience. Level 85. Political organization and governance evolution. Between 1500 CE and 1650 CE, political systems evolved to manage increasingly complex societies. European monarchies centralized power while establishing bureaucracies, taxes, and legal codes. In Asia, the Ming dynasty emphasized merit-based governance, infrastructure, and cultural investment. Philosophically, governance reflected rational planning, ethical responsibility, and societal balance. Leaders integrated law, education, and cultural development, demonstrating that political organization was not merely about control, but about enabling societal prosperity. Effective governance fostered stability, innovation, and intellectual growth, allowing trade, education, and cultural flourishing to occur simultaneously. Level 86. Technological innovation and applied knowledge. Between 1500 CE and 1650 CE, technology transformed daily life, commerce, and warfare. Navigation tools, printing presses, mechanical clocks, and improved agriculture enabled expansion of human capability. Philosophically, innovation reflected curiosity, foresight, and the practical application of knowledge. Societies capable of integrating technology with governance, trade, and education achieved unprecedented efficiency, cultural expression, and global influence. The printing press, in particular, democratized knowledge, allowing ideas to circulate widely and accelerate intellectual and cultural growth. Applied knowledge became the engine of civilization, linking observation, creativity, and practical implementation for the collective benefit. Level 87. Cultural synthesis and knowledge integration. Between 1500 CE and 1650 CE, civilizations synthesized knowledge from diverse sources. Classical Greek philosophy, Islamic science, Chinese technology, and indigenous traditions merged in Europe, Asia, and Africa. Philosophically, synthesis reflected awareness of cumulative wisdom, emphasizing that progress arises from integration rather than isolation. Education, trade, and exploration enabled humans to compare ideas, adopt effective practices, and innovate. Cultural synthesis allowed civilizations to adapt rapidly to changing circumstances, creating resilience, diversity, and intellectual richness. Humanity increasingly recognized that collective knowledge, when shared and adapted, could accelerate societal advancement and foster long-term stability. Level 88. Art, literature, and human experience. Between 1500 CE and 1650 CE, literature, visual arts, and music explored the depth of human experience, morality, and aspiration. Shakespeare, Cervantes, and Montaigne examined identity, ethics, and society, while Baroque art captured emotion, light, and human drama. Philosophically, creative expression enabled reflection on existence, culture, and morality. Art became a vehicle for empathy, cultural cohesion, and moral reasoning, preserving lessons and inspiring future generations. Literature and visual arts provided a bridge between intellect and emotion, demonstrating that civilization's maturity depends not only on material or technological progress, but also on the conscious cultivation of understanding, ethics, and beauty. Level 89. Ethical reflection and societal responsibility. Between 1500 CE and 1650 CE, philosophy, religion, and civic engagement emphasized morality, justice, and responsibility. Humanists, scholars, and leaders debated rights, duties, and governance ethics. Ethical reflection guided trade, law, and education, influencing social cohesion and international relations. Philosophically, this level reflected civilization's capacity to integrate intellect, morality, and action, understanding that societal success requires ethical foundations. Civilizations recognized that prosperity and stability depended not solely on power or technology, but on the conscious cultivation of justice, education, and ethical behavior across generations. Level 90. Global awareness and civilizational consciousness. By 1650 CE, humanity exhibited a heightened awareness of civilization as a collective, interconnected phenomenon. Trade, exploration, intellectual exchange, and cultural synthesis had created networks spanning continents. Philosophically, this level reflected recognition of interdependence, cumulative knowledge, and shared responsibility. Societies understood that progress relied on cooperation, reflection, and moral guidance. Civilization had become a conscious endeavor. Humans deliberately preserved knowledge, expanded understanding, and nurtured creativity and ethics. Awareness of cultural diversity, historical continuity, and technological potential positioned humanity to embark on the next transformative epochs: the Enlightenment, Industrial Revolution, and modern globalization. Civilization's maturity manifested not only in material achievement, but in the conscious shaping of thought, culture, and global perspective. Level 91, the Age of Enlightenment. Between 1650 CE and 1750 CE, the Enlightenment emerged as a global intellectual awakening. Philosophers like John Locke, Voltaire, Montesquieu, and Immanuel Kant questioned authority, emphasized reason, and championed individual liberty. Science, mathematics, and empirical observation were elevated as the primary means to understand the universe. Societies began to challenge traditional hierarchies and superstitions, favoring rational governance, human rights, and moral reflection. This period demonstrated that human civilization could consciously direct its development through knowledge, ethical reasoning, and social reform. Education, print culture, and scientific academies spread new ideas rapidly, creating networks of informed citizens capable of contributing to progress. Philosophically, Level 91 reflected humanity's growing awareness of its own potential, asserting that freedom, reason, and knowledge were essential tools for creating equitable, thriving societies. Level 92. Scientific Revolution and Technological Transformation. Between 1600 CE and 1800 CE, the scientific revolution reshaped human understanding of the natural world. Figures such as Galileo, Newton, and Kepler pioneered observational astronomy, physics, and mechanics, replacing superstition with empirical reasoning. Technologies like the telescope, microscope, and improved navigational instruments transformed exploration, trade, and understanding of the cosmos. Philosophically, this era emphasized the systematic pursuit of truth, experimentation, and verification. Humanity's capacity to investigate, measure, and apply knowledge allowed societies to progress materially, intellectually, and culturally. The integration of observation with mathematics and reasoning laid the groundwork for industrial and technological revolutions, illustrating that civilizations thrive when empirical knowledge is applied ethically and collaboratively. Level 93. Industrial Foundations and Global Expansion. Between 1750 CE and 1850 CE, Industrialization reshaped economies, labor systems, and urban life. Steam engines, mechanized textiles, and iron production increased efficiency and productivity. Cities expanded, trade networks accelerated, and human populations began unprecedented growth. Philosophically, industrialization demonstrated humanity's capacity to harness energy, material resources, and knowledge for collective benefit. However, it also revealed ethical challenges. Labor conditions, social inequality, and environmental impact became pressing concerns. Civilization matured as societies confronted the balance between technological advancement and moral responsibility. Lessons from industrialization emphasized that knowledge, innovation, and governance must be guided by ethical reflection to ensure sustainable progress. Level 94. Global trade, communication, and cultural synthesis. Between 1750 CE and 1900 CE, global trade, telegraphy, and cultural exchange created an interconnected world. Ideas, technologies, and cultural practices moved faster than ever before. Philosophically, this period emphasized interdependence, adaptability, and collective learning. Societies that embraced cross-cultural knowledge gained strategic, economic, and intellectual advantages. Education, travel, and media facilitated the circulation of information, shaping public opinion, scientific collaboration, and artistic innovation. Civilization increasingly recognized that no society exists in isolation. Global awareness and communication became essential tools for progress, peace, and sustainability. The fusion of cultures, technologies, and ideas enhanced human potential, illustrating the power of collective intelligence and collaboration. Level 95. Political philosophy and governance evolution. Between 1750 CE and 1900 CE, political thought evolved alongside societal transformation. Democracy, constitutionalism, and debates on civil rights reshaped governance. Philosophers and statesmen emphasized equality, accountability, and civic participation. Social reforms in education, labor, and justice aimed to balance prosperity with ethical responsibility. Philosophically, this level reflected humanity's capacity for conscious self-governance. Integrating ethical reasoning with practical administration, societies recognized that enduring stability requires education, informed citizens, and moral leadership. Political systems became tools not merely for control, but for shaping civic virtue, fostering innovation, and ensuring long-term societal resilience. Civilizations learned that governance must evolve alongside knowledge, technology, and cultural complexity. Level 96. Scientific and technological integration. Between 1800 CE and 1950 CE, discoveries in electricity, chemistry, medicine, and transportation transformed human life. Electricity powered industries, communications, and domestic life. Vaccines and medical advances reduced disease and mortality, while railways and steamships connected continents. Philosophically, this era demonstrated the responsible application of knowledge to enhance life quality and societal resilience. Humanity learned to manipulate natural forces ethically, improving survival, comfort, and productivity. Integration of multiple disciplines, physics, chemistry, biology, and engineering, showed that complex challenges could be addressed systematically. Civilization increasingly recognized the necessity of interdisciplinary thinking, cooperation, and foresight to navigate technological and social transformation responsibly. Level 97. Modern global awareness and environmental consciousness. Between 1900 CE and 2000 CE, humanity expanded global consciousness through diplomacy, science, and media. World wars, international organizations, and cross-cultural collaboration highlighted the interconnectedness of nations. Philosophically, this period reflected awareness that progress is collective, requiring cooperation, empathy, and moral responsibility. Environmental consciousness emerged as industrial activity threatened ecosystems, emphasizing that long-term survival depends on sustainable practices. Humanity learned that civilization is a delicate balance of technological innovation, ethical governance, and ecological stewardship. Reflection, global awareness, and education became central to shaping societies capable of enduring beyond immediate material gains. Level 98. Information age and cognitive expansion. Between 1950 CE and 2000 CE, the information age revolutionized communication, knowledge access, and human cognition. Computers, the internet, and mass media enabled instant sharing of information across the globe. Philosophically, this era highlighted humanity's capacities to expand collective intelligence, integrate knowledge across disciplines, and collaborate at unprecedented scales. Societies faced both opportunities and ethical challenges. Information could empower, but misinformation threatened social cohesion. Civilization matured as humans learned to navigate, interpret, and apply knowledge responsibly. Education, critical thinking, and ethical reflection became paramount in a world where the speed and volume of knowledge required discernment and deliberate action. Level 99. Global civilization and ethical responsibility. Between 2000 CE and 2025 CE, humanity entered an era of global interconnection, rapid technological advancement, and ethical challenges. Artificial intelligence, biotechnology, space exploration, and renewable energy represented humanity's mastery over knowledge and nature. Philosophically, Level 99 reflected an acute awareness of responsibility. Progress must balance innovation with ethical stewardship, cultural respect, and environmental sustainability. Societies increasingly recognize the interconnectedness of human action, global stability, and planetary well-being. Civilization's maturity is measured not only by technological capacity, but by the conscious integration of ethics, knowledge, and global awareness into decision-making, shaping a collective future for all humanity. Level 100, the pinnacle of human civilization. Humanity now stands at the threshold of unprecedented potential. Civilizations have integrated millennia of knowledge, exploration, philosophical reflection, and technological mastery. The global society of the 21st century embodies awareness of interdependence, responsibility, and collective intelligence. Philosophically, this level represents the ultimate integration of human consciousness, the ability to reflect on the past, innovate for the present, and anticipate the future with ethical foresight. Knowledge, technology, and culture converge to form a civilization conscious of itself and its impact. Humanity now navigates challenges of sustainability, equity, and global cooperation with tools refined over centuries. Observation, reasoning, creativity, and empathy. At level 100, civilization embodies a synthesis of all previous levels. Intellectual curiosity, artistic expression, ethical governance, technological mastery, and global consciousness. Humans are no longer merely survivors or conquerors. They are architects of a deliberate, reflective, and interconnected society. Awareness of history, culture, and potential allows civilizations to evolve sustainably, ethically, and creatively. Civilization's pinnacle is not simply technological or material achievement, but the conscious shaping of knowledge, society, and the human spirit in harmony with the planet and the collective human community. This ultimate level represents the conscious integration of past wisdom with future potential, ensuring that humanity can navigate the unknown with resilience, creativity, and moral clarity.